Hi, my name is Doucet, and I'm from the Canadian Open Data Society. Right now, you're watching the Data Project with Yukon Open Data. So, just to give a little overview of what we're going to be doing today, what we'll be doing first off is I'll teach you some basic knowledge regarding open data, some of the stuff related to it that'll help with some fundamental knowledge. And then we'll sort of go over some tools and techniques, things are going to help you with your projects going forward. And then we're going to work on a specific project with Yukon Open Data using data from their data portal. And then we're going to work with some of that data in a program I like to use, Tableau Public. So our agenda today will just be a quick recap and hello. I'm going to go over some core concepts. We'll talk about gathering data and some tools of using that. We'll then finally dive into our project and how we're going to do it. I'll teach you some methodology through the PPDAC model I like, and finally we'll conclude with a Tableau demonstration. So just a little bit about me is I work for Toronto Public Health in the data assessment and processing team, currently working on COVID-19. I'm also a board member of the Canadian Open Data Society. And my background is I have a Master's of Information from the University of Toronto, though some, namely my partner, says it's a Master of Suspect Information. And feel free to call me that or call me out on things you disagree with. And on the right, you can see my contact info there. So you're welcome to reach out and contact me, even just to say hi. I'm pretty friendly.
Okay, so here's the good news. There's no coding. All software used is free, and everything that I show you here that involves working with data is 100% reproducible, so that means you can follow from home very easily. I'm also making the assumption that you have a basic understanding of what open data is, as I won't be explaining that today. Now, if you're lost or unsure or feel like you need to know what that is, we have a fabulous introduction to the Dataverse that is part of the data-driven Entrepreneurship and Innovation program. So make sure you check that out because that's included with the summit. Before we start, I want to cover some core concepts to reinforce our knowledge of working with data. Okay, so right off the bat, the importance of research cannot be overstated. It is too easy to get sidetracked with data when our projects could actually benefit from more research and actually less data. Your organization can have the best data, eye-opening visualizations, and top-notch analysis, but that could just be time wasted without the proper research behind it. Let's take, for example, the turkey around Thanksgiving at the farm. Now, imagine you're in its perspective, right? And think from it all the data points that it has. Life's feeling pretty great. The farmer comes in every day, gives him extra feed. He's bulking up for winter. He's got more friends coming to visit him. He's probably thinking, hey, this farmer's a swell guy. Maybe he's going to invite me into the house soon and I'll be part of the family like the dog. And that might be a reasonable conclusion based on the data that the turkey has, but I think we all know how that ends. So to avoid being blindsided like the turkey, we first start with an environmental scan that helps you understand the area that you're collecting data in. This is free-form research. Use Google or whatever you prefer. Your goal is to learn what you can about your topic so that when you get information from strong sources, you have the context to put it in. Then afterwards, you're going to default to the experts, subject matter experts, already established research, organizational reports, and finally government publications. Initially, it may not be clear what source is trustworthy, but as you spend more time reading, researching, and qualifying information, it becomes so much easier over time. One tool that improves our ability to work with data is machine readable data. Essentially, they are file structured so that they can be read and processed by a variety of computer applications. This allows users to not be limited in which software they use and opens up the potential for what you can do with your data. So what you can do with your data. For example, you can take an XML file off of the Yukon Open Data Portal, load it up into Google Sheets, play around with it a bit, download it as a CSV file, and then upload the file to Tableau and begin working on visualizations. Looking at the figure on the right, we can see how easy it is to turn an XML file into a CSV file. It takes about 3 or 4 clicks and your data is ready in another machine readable format. So once again, you just go File, Download, and then comma separated value. One of the more exciting aspects of open data is combining two different data sets together to help develop insights. Often all you need is a common variable to bring them together. For example, now this is hypothetical. Let's say we have two disparate data sets, right? One is the average annual temperature, and the other is annual rainfall. Now, because this is Canadian data and we both have access to the cities, we can actually bring them together under one table under the key city. So, and then we can use this to gain more information and maybe study the impacts of climate change on the cities. Okay, let's take another example directly from the Yukon Open Data Portal. Okay, so we're going to use the National Household Survey data regarding housing tenure and minority information from 2011. And again, that's from the Yukon Open Data Portal. Now, often one good reason to mash different data sets together is when you're in the exploration phase and you want to actually see what's there. It's helpful to have everything you want to look at together sometimes. So, as we can see, with the housing tenure data set and the minority data set, we bring them under the common variable of region, right? And these are the individual regions in the Yukon. So we then attached housing information so we can maybe investigate who was renting and who was owning. And then we bring in the minority data so we can get some social economic information on the population. Putting data together can help you think of new questions to ask, such as what background makes someone more likely to rent in Whitehorse. Now, this data set cannot really provide that answer, but sometimes it's not about getting the answers, and sometimes it's about being pointed in the right direction and asking more questions. Now, some considerations before you dive too quickly in is one of the more frustrating elements of working with open data is there's not data on every topic. It's getting better, but there's still a lot of work to be done in making data open and accessible to everyone. The quality is also not consistent between each data set. And this is because different organizations may have different collection and reporting standards. That doesn't mean we shouldn't trust it. It's more of something to be mindful of, which leads us to be more cautious about the conclusions that we draw when we're working with data that you might not be familiar with. And again, this ties back into the research element where you want to make sure you're not missing something. And lastly, and I think this is the most important, is save the data that you're working on your computer at least somewhere else, or on your computers, make sure you have access to the physical file. Now, for two reasons. Sometimes the data goes offline on these data portals. So that means good luck trying to find it and might become quite the pain, or you might not even get it back. The other reason is that if you're giving, you want your work to be reproducible, you're going to want someone to have access to that data. Otherwise, they won't be able to follow along exactly with what you did, which makes your work being reproducible almost impossible. So there's some things to keep in mind. So next, let's just talk about some familiar places that we can get some data from. So we are fortunate to have access to many open data portals. Many cities, as well as provinces and the federal government, have their own open data catalogs, as we can see from the Yukon Open Data Portal on the left of the page. If you want to learn more which ones exist, you can search on the Canadian Open Data website under Open Data Portals. You can see a sampling of which Canada has to offer. And then we have map data such as NASA's Earth data, and we can also extract information from websites around the internet, pulling data from tables, such as like from Wikipedia. And then there are other websites that act as open data repositories with lots of open data like Kaggle. And another good one that most people don't realize is Google. They actually have a lot of open data sets, and they're definitely worth getting checked out. Now, most of the open data websites that you will visit, you'll have options to download the data in a variety of formats. The most common ones being CSV, JSON, and XML. You can also get map data in other formats such as HTML and PDF. Now, for data that's locked behind a PDF, you can actually grab data from that, which I'll show you how to do that next. But we also have some software that pulls data from websites such as Google Sheets, ability to pull tables from HTML pages like Wikipedia, which is pretty cool, which I'll also show you. And then there are some advanced tricks, which is web scraping through either there's software which has an either out of the box solution for you or custom software, or you can, code your own, right, with a computer language like Python. But we won't be covering any of that as it's more advanced, but those are options for you to consider. Okay, so we're going to show you next the power of Tabula, its ability to extract machine readable data from a PDF. Now, this is a program that you will need to download, and you'll have to make sure that your Java is up to date. It's not perfect, and you may have to play around with it, as the tables can be very unique for each individual case, but sure beats doing it yourself. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get to the Yukon Bureau of Statistics website, and we'll take it over from there. So yeah, just head to the Yukon Bureau of Statistics. Now I've already looked here, so I want to show something I thought was cool. I thought it was called baby names. And I was looking at things, so I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. Baby names. And you'll notice that the file type is a PDF. Darn, that sucks. Well, maybe not actually. We'll see. So we're going to download and then we'll just talk about it briefly. Desktop. Okay. Okay. Well, I thought it was interesting as you can actually, if you look at the actual accounts, they're actually quite low. Yukon does not have a very big population, right? So you can actually see patterns much more easier. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to grab some data from that. Okay, so we're just going to close this. Now we're going to open up Tabula. Give me 1 second, it's booting up. Oh, okay, so this is the interface of Tabula. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is click Browse and click the PDF you want. Okay, once it's up, you hit Import. Okay, perfect. Okay, and here you go. Now, very simple. All you have to do is grab it like this, do this, and then you want to find the table that you need. Now, keep in mind what I said earlier. It's not going to be exact, like it's not going to be perfect, but it's usually pretty easy to fix. So here we go. We can grab a quick snap like this. Then all you have to go to is preview the data, and you can see, voila, you have it in a nice table. Now, as you can see, there's a couple of problems, which again, isn't too hard to fix. Girls here is empty with count, so you would just shift this over. And then you'll see that Noah and Oliver, they've had an issue, and you're going to go, wait a minute, there's a double 8. So again, these are one things where it's not perfect, right? So you would just go to export. Perfect. Okay. So okay. Oop, I'm just pulling the data on my desktop. Okay. So then you also be curious, like what happened with Noah 6 and Olive 6? Okay, so we just go back, take a peek. So Noah 6. So it looks like the must be one of the 8s or something got misread. So again, It's not perfect, but generally this can give you a pretty good way. And this is actually a pretty like no, not an easy one to grab from. So it just shows you the versatility. So, but again, you can. It's pretty easy to clean that up. So what you can do, go to your web browser. Now every Google account has access to this. So click on the dots here and go down to Google Sheets. And we're going to go to blank. And here we go. Okay. So we're going to open that file we just brought in. Open with Google Sheets. Okay. So what you can do quickly is just, take this, cut it, put it over here. There you go. Your counter's back. And grab this, bring this down here, take out this row. Oop, I would actually insert row below, whatever. Okay. So Oliver, you should have 8. And of course you would just verify that this is correct, and then you can just sort of save it, whatever you want, or you can download it as like, PDF again, a CSV, and then continue working on it and doing other things to it. But yeah, that's simply how it works. It's pretty neat. So that's how easy cleaning can be. Okay. So let's go on to the next part, because the next part's pretty cool too. Okay, so we're gonna go right into another demo. So with Google Sheets, you can pull a table from an HTML website and then download it also as a CSV. So it's pretty useful. This also requires some fiddling, but it's actually easier than Tabula. So we're going to pull, since I'm interested in cities, we're going to pull some data from Wikipedia on what the largest cities are in North America. So the first thing we're going to do, I'll just show you where to get that, is, hold on. Oop. So, oop. 1 second. Oop. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to Wikipedia, North American cities. Okay. So that's going to give us the list of, the list of cities by population. So we can see Mexico is at the highest. Ooh, Toronto's in 4th. That's pretty cool. And it goes all the way down. Now, let's say we want to grab this table. Again, this would be quite the pain to copy. So we can grab it actually with Google Sheets. So just new window. Let's go back into Google Sheets. Let's see. Okay, so you put in right here, and you notice it's NA because the hyperlink. We've got to grab the website now, which is probably I should have grabbed that as well. So let's grab the website and go here. And do not delete the quotations, whatever you do. And you're good to go. And there you go. You'll notice you don't have the image, but I think just for intents purposes, getting the country, the city, and the population, that's pretty cool. And there's other stuff you can remove out later, but I don't want to go into that right now. It takes a little bit more advanced. But this is another cool way of getting data. Okay. So, where are we? Okay, so let's go back to the demo. Okay, so before I send you on your way to gather data, I need you to be informed of what you can and can't take off the internet. Now, the laws are different between Canada and the United States, so you need to be diligent when you're trying to see if what you're doing is above board. The easiest way out of stay of trouble is to respect the wishes of the source. When websites have some explanation of what's allowed and what isn't, follow it. It's usually on their terms of service. If you're ever in doubt, don't take anything. And never touch anything with personal information. If you're using scraping tools, look, type, like for example, on the right here, after reddit.com, type /robots.txt. Now try this on a lot of different websites, and you'll notice there's actually instructions there. And the user agent is basically what they're allowing is you to sort of scrape. Now, if you're confused why they're doing this, it's because having people doing like automated scraping can put a tremendous burden on a website, which can cause financial implications. There's also the fact that companies are trying to protect their data from being taken, right? And no matter what you do, always source the data and where you got it from. So that's incredibly important. So keep those, and you should be above board. Okay, our project. I know it's taking a little bit long to get here, but I think it's important to understand that there's so much more that goes into a data project than actually just the project itself. There's a lot of things to think about. So today we're going to do a quick project that's looking at the transportation sector in Yukon, Canada. We're going to be exploring the front lines of climate change. And this is an important topic as the transportation sector is responsible for 27% of the greenhouse emissions in Canada. Yikes. Now, before I started, I had to learn a bit about the transportation sector. At first, I wanted to know what was considered sustainable transportation. So using StatsCan as my subject matter expert, they defined it as walking, bicycling, public transit, and carpooling. And I thought it was kind of interesting that carpooling was considered sustainable transportation, right? Because vehicles are still on the road, but they sort of view it as it's, say there's two people in a car, it's one less person in their vehicle, which means one less vehicle on the road, which is, their goal of having less cars on the road. So that's why it's uh, being included. Now, once I started realizing that, I started looking on the Yukon Open Data Portal to see if they had measurements for sustainable public transit. And that's where I found some data on transportation, which had these indicators that I wanted, basically bicycling, public transit, carpooling, and walking. So when we're bringing the data together, I usually follow a methodology. And this one's called the PPDAC. Now, this is, a data problem solving model. And you'll often see this in statistical settings, but I think we're going to find good use for it here and how to approach a data project. So your first goal is to define the problem. What questions are we trying to solve? And then for the planning stage, we need to start putting, the how into action. Where will we get the data? What do we want to measure? How much data we need to answer that question? And then we get to the data side. We're going to get the data and download it to our computer. Then we'll have the analysis is where we'll be exploring our data, the Tableau to see what we observe. And then finally, the conclusion is where we report our findings, potentially also having more questions and answers, where this is also a period where we can provide recommendations or even start the whole process again. And just to be clear with that arrow there, at any point you can restart the process. It's supposed to be very iterative. And several times you can restart a project. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how you learn more about an individual area. So let's focus on the problem first. First you need to define what is going on and what we're trying to solve. Sometimes this is the easiest part, and sometimes this is the hardest. For us, it was the easiest. Our topic was easy as we were exploring the front lines of climate change and also planning to use the Yukon open data. We had to do our research to understand the problem. That's how I discovered that transportation is a big link to climate change, even though that might be fairly obvious. Then we could go about solving the problem by finding data on transportation. Deciding how to tackle is really depends on your project management constraints, such as your time, your scope, and cost. I wanted something simple for a demo, so I decided I want something straightforward. So I want transportation as easy to measure, such as commuting time. So any data relevant on the number of sustainable transportation methods would be incredibly useful for figuring that out. So for the plan, you start off by determining where can you get the data. Now, being a project on Yukon, I decided the Yukon Open Data Portal. I also briefly looked at the StatsCan data on the portal and a few other repositories to see what I could find. Importantly, you have to make sure that you actually have the data that can address your problem. If not, you need to go back a step and adjust the problem and start again on the planning section. The Yukon data portal had data sets on sustainable transportation methods, so it aligned perfectly. You know, we inspect it quickly through a preview section, and then we can be assured we can actually use it to answer our question. I explored the dataset from the preview options and noticed that it described many different modes of transportation. Now, note, if you're planning on using multiple datasets, you'll want to know if you're going to need to integrate them into one dataset, and more importantly, do you know how to do that? And then you're going to want to figure out how you plan on analyzing the data, which programs you're going to use. I decided on Tableau Public because it's free and it's quite versatile in what it can accomplish. This is my favorite phase. We collect all the data sets we need. This is where we examine the data more carefully, see how the data fits in with the rest of our project work. Very often we get here and we realize that the data doesn't have the quality we need or the ability to answer our questions, and we have to restart. We ensure that we have electronic copies of them and that we have access to it. I store mine in a data folder related to the project. And then we bring in our application of choice, which in our case is Tableau Public. I examine the data, we can make and clean the data, which is making it more suitable for our purposes. An example is taking away data that like serves no purpose to us, right? Or anything that's not really relevant. Now, the analysis phase is where you will begin to manipulate the data. You will see that in our analysis phase that we will add columns to data to make the analysis more clear. More on that later. We will then start coming up with questions, then representing the data into tables to give insights to those questions. This section can be the longest, can have a substantial amount of revisions as you play with the data to understand it. But just a quick warning, I want you to avoid what's called data dredging. It's more common in big data, but we should still be mindful. It's essentially manipulating the data until we can find any relationship between the data. Now, this is because it's important to honestly demonstrate what the data says, not what we want it to say. Finally, we have our conclusion. We interpret our result and communicate our ideas. What did we learn about the sustainable transportation methods? We would also mention anything that might not be clear, such as the data we omitted that might be relevant, actually. We could then provide some recommendations and areas for further inquiry. As an example, after looking at the data in Tableau, it may be curious about how does Whitehorse, the capital of Yukon, relate to the other provinces or territories? And with that, we have something to go on our next project. So let's see how this would unfold through Tableau Public. Okay, we're just going on to the final stage where we're going to use Tableau Public. So just for those that are unfamiliar, Tableau Public is Tableau's free version, and it has a cloud option and a desktop. You will need an account to sign in and use it. Tableau is a powerful visualization tool with lots of easy-use features. We will just be exploring the most basics of Tableau Public today. That means we won't be covering visualizations and instead sticking to its more familiar tables. This to show you how versatile it is. I hope you will try to follow along or do it on your own. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. So to start, let's open up our web browsers to the Yukon Open Data Portal. Okay. I'll use some drink of water. Okay, first what we're going to do is open up the Yukon Open Data Portal. We're going to go here. Okay, so this is the landing page here. You can see, oh wow, they got a lot of data. So you can search for here, and these are your categories. I'm just going to click this to get to the next section. As you can see, here are our topics. Since I already knew we're going to pick transportation, you can just click transportation. Now formats, I like CSV just because over XML, just because it's faster. So I'm going to grab this. And from here, you're going to see we have 3 data sets to grab from. Now, what you want to do in this situation is you get 3. You want to grab the one that's always the most up to date. Okay. Now, don't rush and click download off the bat. What you want to do is look here and you read some information. Everything they read could be important, right? Like for example, here it says a value of 0 in any of the cell represents one of the following. A value is actually 0. The value may be random, rounded to 0, or the value is more than 0 but is expressed for confidentiality reasons. Okay, that's pretty important. So that's why you should always look. Also, make sure to get the preview quickly, and then you can sort of see, okay, this looks what we need. Look, there's cars, public walking, bicycle. This is just what we need. Okay. Then you can download the data. Okay. Data. Okay, perfect. Okay, here's cons. Okay. So here's where I'm going to put it. Now, this is sort of an awkward name. So what I'm going to do is just make it easier. It's always better to rename things. Oh, rename. We're going to call this 2011 transportation. Okay. Okay. So let's load up Tableau Public. Okay. So we load it up. Now, this is a section where we load our data. Now remember, a CSV is a text file, not a Microsoft Excel. So if you just click here, this is where we can load our data. So go into our Rabbit. And here we go. Okay. You can see here that this is the one that's being loaded. Same name is here. It's a text file. This is some previous work. Now, let me bring this up a bit. Okay. So this is sort of like a summary. Now you can just sort of hit this to collapse it. It won't get rid of it, but it just makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on. So this is sort of a preview section where you can sort of see what the data looks like a bit more. Now, you can get rid of things that you don't find are useful, like the data notes. Now, oh, see, it says here data is being suppressed, but we already know that with an X, so we don't really need to know that. So we can basically go to hide it. Now, Yukon, so this is pretty much the same. We don't need this, so we can hide this if we want. And we can also change the format to make it more useful. So, okay, you see here where it says total population. Now, watch this. So you notice this number should be here, but for some reason it's not going there. Now, it's because this is an ABC, it's a string. You want to, as soon as you switch it to a whole, now watch it now. Now it works. So same thing with this, switch it to a whole. Anything you switch it to a whole. And you switch it to a whole. Okay. Now, this is interesting. If you look on the right here, you're going to notice where it says other methods. Now, these are one of the situations where you need to make a decision about does this be included or not be included as part of like sustainable methods. Now, me personally, I am going to include it because I think other methods could be either remote or on site. Now, these are one of the things when you're writing conclusions, you're going to put in there and say, this is the decision I made. So that way, if someone who disagrees with it can simply just change it without fundamentally changing your project. That's one of the good ways That's why it's important to have your work that's reproducible. Okay, so once you've done that, now you don't have to do it in here. You can also do it in this menu, but I was just showing you in the data source. So click on your sheet one. Now again, let's just rename it to 2000. It's a good habit, transportation. Okay, so here we go. So what you do is, where is region? Okay, we're just going to simply grab region and pull it into here. Now, you see these bicycle, passenger, one by one, we're just going to grab them and drop them in here. Where is walking? We'll put walking in here. Public transit we'll put in there. As a passenger, we'll put in there. And other methods we'll put in there. We're going to want total population in there. Okay, so what if I don't like the order? I want to actually be from most sustainable to least sustainable. So you can just grab it. So grab walking, you can put walking there, bicycle. Yeah, you can have public transit there. Other methods, we're going to leave it there, and then car. But wait, I can't read anything. So one option you could do is you can either change the columns, or you can go to fit, entire view, and there you go. Now you should be able to see substantially better. As simple as that. You've now just from dragging a region into here and then dropping the categories you want onto the table, you now have a very easily table. So now let's sort it here. Now remember that there wasn't data on these. So very simple. All you have to do is grab that, hold shift, go all the way down, and then just hit exclude. Right? Now we also don't really necessarily need Yukon, the total of Yukon for this case. You could, but we'll move it just to show you. And there we go. We now have a more depiction. Now, very simple, you can also do calculations, which I like. Let me show you. Right click here and go to create calculated fields. You want to come up with a name. We're going to call this sustainable users. So all you do is you typed in the categories you want. Walked. Now, then you're going to want bicycle. Now you'll notice that it says this calculation contains errors. So this is its way of telling you what's wrong. This is the format, which is good because it makes it easy. So if you spell plus, I think I made it. There you go. Walked plus bicycle plus public, sorry, plus public transit plus other methods plus car as passenger. And there you go. You now have something called sustainable users. And then you can put it where you would like. And there you go. From here, you now know Whitehorse has a total, they have 13,000 people who commute to work by one method or another. And we know that they have 3,300 sustainable users. Now we can take it further if you want, and we can go right click on it, and we can go to create calculated field, and we can go percentage. Okay, percentage. So what you do, the same thing. You would go sustainable. Yeah, sustainable users divided by total employment population times by 100. percentage, and you just throw it in here. It goes in the last one, and there you go. There you go. 25% of Whitehorse is sustainable. Now, sorry, for traveling to work. So that is very briefly how you can use Tableau. Now we won't go into it, but other option you can do is you can start using maps and start graphing it, but we won't get into that. But that ends today's workshop and just shows you briefly how to use Tableau, its power, and pretty user-friendly interface. Again, feel free to reach out to me with any questions. And it's been a real pleasure. Have a wonderful, well, summit. Enjoy the rest. Cheers.